the sports betting network.
This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line. Thank you for getting your final day of the work week started here with us. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford, giving you everything you need to know for the upcoming weekend of football. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We got a trio of guests for you. Thomas Gable of the Borgata joining us at 7:45 Eastern with his Bookmaker insights. Then at 8:45 Eastern, Matthew Friedman, NFL analyst for Fantasy Life, joining Harrison with some fantasy tips to set your roster this weekend. And at 9 a.m., our regular Tim Murray joining us with his best bets for college football week 8. Coming up in this hour, we are recapping Thursday night football, recapping some really exciting MLB postseason games, looking at week 7's top games and handicapping those, and then, of course, getting Thomas Gable on the line and talking to him. So let's get into Thursday night football. Broncos pretty much dominated this one from start to finish, beating the Saints 33-10, covering as a 2.5-point favorite. The total goes over 37.5, the closing number. Michael, what were your biggest takeaways from this game?
Well, the Saints just didn't have enough manpower to really even compete in the game, and it was pretty obvious from the start. The lack of offensive linemen that they needed, the lack of corners especially, without Lattimore in the game, and then they lose Adobo in the game with the horrible injury. So it, to me, was an undermanned New Orleans team, and it's a New Orleans team defensively that can't tackle. They just cannot tackle at all. They gave up another 225 yards on the ground, 6.4 yards a carry. This was the perfect game, as we talked about yesterday, for Denver, because they could keep Bo Nix from having to really play a lot. They were going to be able to run the football. They averaged 6.4 a carry. So, it's 5 games now that the Saints have given up 2,218 yards in those 5 games, 445 yards per game when you break it down. And there's just not enough offensive firepower. And with a rookie quarterback, there were a lot of third downs, 17 third downs in the game. And that's just no way to win a game. So unfortunately, it's bad times for the Saints, and I think it's going to continue to get worse.
If you look at last night's performance for the New Orleans Saints, now they have 5 straight losses. They have one more game, Michael, before the trading deadline. They're going to take on the Chargers after this upcoming bye week. We talked about it yesterday, just their salary cap position, the way their books are kind of set up. They're not set up in a good position. I have to imagine, Michael, that soon and very soon, that some of these players on this roster could be out there on the trade market. Whether it's potentially a Derek Carr, I don't know how much sense that would make. Whether it could be potentially an Alvin Kamara. I'm not sure how it's all set up, but it would feel like with the season kind of going away from them and their salary cap the way that it is, the advantageous thing to do as a franchise is to start selling off some pieces.
Yeah, well, I think that sounds good in theory. The problem is all their players would take a lot of hit from a cap standpoint in a trade. To then they don't have enough cap room to take that hit. They would then have to dump money. I think that's the real part. They've kind of trapped themselves into a situation. I mean, Kamara's been available for a while now. He's at $14 million. Nobody wanted to touch him. He wanted a redo on his contract. He had 7 carries for 10 yards last night. He's frustrated. You could see it in his play. To me, I think the issue is they want to keep their good players, I'm sure, Harrison, but they don't have enough really. I mean, they could trade Chase Young, I'm sure, but, he's at a huge number and doesn't play as well as they need him to play. I don't know who else they could possibly move off their team that people would say, boy, I really need that guy. I could take that guy. I mean, they're not going to trade Derek Carr. I mean, they just redid his contract. They put a ton of money into him for next year. They're kind of married to him.
After starting 2-0 and scoring 91 points in those combined games, the Saints have now lost 5 straight. They've scored they scored 79 points in those games, back-to-back 20-point losses. That's something that hasn't happened since 2001. And now Dennis Allen, a guy that after those 2 games to start the season, we were asking, can he be a candidate for Coach of the Year? You're seeing him pop up on these articles who's next to be fired after Robert Saleh. So how hot is the seat of Dennis Allen now?
Well, I think it's really hot. I mean, obviously, the progress that they thought they could make. Mickey Loomis runs the team. He also runs the basketball team there, too. So the Benson family has given him complete authority to do whatever he needs to do. But this team, if they do make a coaching change, is not an attractive job because they're so debt heavy going forward that the way they've managed this cap over the last years with Sean, they just keep pushing things outward into next year. Well, next year is eventually going to come, and whoever comes in there has got to take on a situation that's probably going to be a little bit difficult. Now, look, in fairness to Dennis, the offensive line's a mess. Ruiz is hurt. We know McCoy's on IR. They're playing backups. They had to move players around last night. It's not good. They had to put Landon Young, who's usually a tackle. They put him into guard. It just was ugly, and they don't have any skill players. I mean, losing all the players that they had to bring up guys like we talked about from the practice squad. Mason Tipton, who's a college free agent. That's just not going to get it. Bubba Means, who's a fifth-round pick. It's hard to play rookie receivers in an offense where you got to come against a team that plays man-to-man on you. So I think there's a lot of things going on here, but I think Dennis Allen's in jeopardy. There's no question.
Last night was definitely a brutal watch for the casual sports fan, that is for sure. Unless you were a Denver Broncos fan. They ended up getting the win last night. And now, Michael, I think they're well positioned here to play into week 17, week 18, and have a legit chance to get a spot. It feels as if maybe them or the Chargers feel very much likely to get that last playoff spot in the AFC. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Denver, you look at their schedule, and they certainly have an advantage. And look, they're a hard team to play. They're going to run the football. They're going to manage the game correctly. I think that was a huge game for all the people that listened to us during the spring about New Orleans going over their win total, which they're definitely going to go over this year. I mean, they're well coached. They're fundamentally sound. Bo Nix actually looked like he got better last night. He's better on the move. They ran effectively with him. I mean, he was the second leading rusher on their team, but his athleticism, and I think the game's starting to slow down for him. But this defense is really good. They have good front seven pressure. They can cover in the back end. And they just, they won a game without their best corner on the field. So, look, one thing you can't underestimate is the value of coaching in the National Football League, and Sean Payton's a really good coach.
Bo Nix was so fun to watch. And by the way, his 75 rush yards, the most for a Denver quarterback since Tim Tebow in 2011. Hey, those were fun times in the Rocky Mountains. Okay, let's get into some baseball because this Yankees-Guardians game was absolutely electric last night with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. Rookie pinch hitter John Kenzie Noel, the guy known as Big Christmas, brings in the game-tying runs with a home run. Then David Fry in extra innings connects on a 2-run shot, rallying Cleveland past the Yankees. I'm looking at Harrison's face now. Oh, no. Cleveland wins in extra innings, 7-5. New York, though, still has the series lead 2-1. But now Cleveland has a chance to tie it up tonight. So many emotions in this game. Yankees were 1 strike away. They may be celebrating a little bit too early in the dugout. Aaron Boone was asked about it. He got a little testy.
Come on. No. Got this in the bag. Stop it with that. That's, it's the playoffs, man. You did tying home runs and go ahead homers. That's what it looks like. Yeah, I mean, you never have anything in the bag in the playoffs. No. You never take anything for granted.
Grace, first and foremost, it was not Christmas for me last night. That was rough. My energy and my excitement for the Yankees was really peaking. Oh, he was definitely the Grinch. That's 100% sure. But after Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge combined for those back-to-back home runs, I thought it was signed, sealed, and delivered. And then Luke Weaver came in. And, there is a train of thought here that actually Aaron Boone mismanaged this whole thing because he asked Weaver to come in there to get more than an inning's worth of of outs. And if you backtrack to game number 2, when the Yankees had a reasonable, sizable lead, I believe it was a 3-run lead, he elected to go to Luke Weaver to close the game. there is some train of thought that he wasn't needed. You could have stayed with Tim Hill. You could have stayed with Canely. You could have used Clay Holmes. And maybe, just maybe, even with the days of rest, that Weaver couldn't finish the job last night. But at the end of the day, you just got to give props to good hitting, not just between Big Christmas, Noel, but also David Fry as well. Clay Holmes is one strike away from getting the job done. It's a disheartening loss if you're a Yankee fan, disheartening loss if you're a Yankee backer. But I think the encouraging thing is that you saw Aaron Judge last night actually put the ball out of the park. It's been something that he has been struggling with in terms of actually getting hits in this postseason. But man, that was rough. There's no way around it. You thought that if you get to Class A, it's a wrap. Mm-hmm. Yankees winning this series, but that was the case. It's going to be interesting. Both of these teams depend on their bullpen in some way, shapes, and form. Cade Smith was good. Canely was good. But the actual guys you depend on, Weaver and Holmes and Class A, not good. So when the strength of your team is not performing as the strength, it makes it very hard to bet on.
Yeah, it felt like Cleveland was stringing along some hits. They just didn't have the big one coming at the right moment, and they finally delivered last night. But good news for New York is twice now they've made Clase A look human, not like the all-star closer he is. Tonight it'll be Luis Gil against Gavin Williams on the mound. Yankees open as a -120 favorite. Guardians +105 on the money line right now with a total of 7.5 runs, juice to the over. All right, coming up next, we'll get to more baseball later in the show, but we're going to get into the tightest NFL games of the weekend. There are 3 games here with a 1.5-point spread. We're going to break those down next on the VSiN Morning Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Friday on Follow the Money, MLB playoff action, and we go over a huge weekend, college football in the NFL, picks and props with Adam Chernoff and Mike Somich. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter. You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are getting you ready for NFL Week 7 with our handicaps of the game. 3 tight games expected here with spreads of 1.5 points. We're going to start with a divisional game between the Lions and the Vikings. We saw this number get up to 2.5 on Wednesday, but it's gone back down to 1.5 ever since. The Vikings, the home favorite here, with a high total of 50.5 points. Michael, what's the key to this game?
Well, this is an interesting. I didn't think the Vikings would be the favorite. I actually thought the Lions, based on the way they've been playing the last few weeks, would be the favorite. So it's kind of interesting. And it seems to me that Minnesota is getting the respect that their undefeated record deserves. Without Aaron Jones, though, this gives me some concern. I mean, Ty Chandler's a good running back for them, but I think Aaron Jones makes this all go. And when you watch the Lions play, with their ability to now control the line of scrimmage and run the football, they went in there last year and ran the ball on a good Minnesota defense. Minnesota's one of the best run defenses in all of football. It's hard, but I think the Detroit winning up there knows they can do it. So I know they're going to try to put a lot of pressure on Goff to make him move off the spot, to hurry him up, to feel like he's under pressure. Even though he may not be, they want him to play faster than he does. When he's in control, he's really good. When he has to play and move, it's not so much. So I don't know if this is a reaction to the Hutchinson injury, but to me, I'm surprised. I mean, I have Detroit as the favorite in this game when I break down my numbers, and I don't understand how it is. I'm surprised more people aren't taking the Lions and moving this number down further to where it becomes pick 'em.
Michael, you said you have the Lions favored in this matchup, and if you look at one of the strengths of the Detroit Lions, and maybe the biggest strength of the Detroit Lions, is that offensive line, their ability to rush the ball. But if you look at the statistics from so far this year, Minnesota has been great at stopping the run. Why are you still going to favor the Lions in this instance when you have the Vikings so capable, or showing that they're so capable of being so good in the run-stopping game?
Well, I mean, they ran the ball on them last year. If you go through the numbers last year when they were there, they could run the ball. Now, last year's last year, so we don't hang on that too much. But I think when you break down the game, I think you see that they were very effective in moving the football there last year. They had the ability to run it, and I think they can. I think Brian is a little bit of in a dilemma when he gets into situations where teams can kind of run the football effectively on him. So my sense of this is Detroit's going to move the ball on anybody, and I think the one weakness of the Vikings is their secondary. Can they cover well enough? And this offensive can also pass protect really well. I think this is a game where the Lions will throw to run as opposed to run to throw. I think that's what you have to do, and then see if the Vikings offense can play from behind. I think that's going to be the real key.
Lions coming off that 47-9 crushing of the Cowboys, but it was a Pyrrhic victory for them as they lost Aiden Hutchinson. We know Sam Darnold, his production declines under pressure. So how do they get the pressure on him without their best defensive player?
Well, I think they're going to have to, obviously they're going to have to do more blitzing. They're going to have to pressure them inside. One thing Minnesota is really good is their offensive line can pass protect. They're one of the best pass protecting lines in the league. So that's always hard. But I think Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, he's going to have to come with some more pressure. I think they feel more confident in their corners this year than they did last year when they played up there. So I'm sure they're going to double Justin Jefferson. T.J. Hockenson is supposed to come off of IR this week. That would certainly open up another weapon, but I think they're going to take their chances with Jordan Addison and see if they can hold up with him and double Justin Jefferson.
When you look at this game, Michael, earlier this week I actually suggested a first quarter bet. Kevin O'Connell's offense, I was backing them in order to make a first quarter bet, and where the Vikings were laying 1.5 points, and it was at plus money. And considering no Aiden Hutchinson, considering the fact that the Minnesota Vikings are coming off of a bye week, and I thought it would be a good lean here, especially with this Vikings being at home, to take the Vikings laying the points in the first quarter specifically. I never got your thoughts on it, so curious to get those now.
But the Vikings in the first quarter, I mean, look, this is the one thing Kevin O'Connell does a really good job of is game planning. And I think he knows the best thing that he can do for his defense is play from in front. I think there's certainly that element. He's really good at being able to start the game fast, try to get the ball, move it down the field, and take advantage of the predictability of what the Lions might be in as we start this game. So I think the first quarter is going to be key. The Lions want to play from in front too. Look, last week against Dallas, the Lions took the ball, which is not typical for most teams playing on the road. They wanted to take the ball because they wanted to play Dallas from behind. They wanted Dallas to have to play from behind. They went right down the field and scored. So I think, to me, that knowing Dan Campbell and knowing how he operates, I think he understands the urgency in the first quarter as well, which will put a lot of pressure on the Vikings too.
So many great games this weekend. One of them is a Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and the 49ers. This line has held steady at 1.5, favoring the home team all week long, despite 80% of the tickets and handle coming in on the Chiefs side. Kyle Shanahan, going into this game, obviously had to review the game tape from last year's title game. Was a little painful for him to go watch that back. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, I think everyone understands that we've lost 2 Super Bowls to them. So, I mean, that can give a little post-traumatic stress when you turn on the tape, but I think that's human nature. But you got to make sure you don't get caught up in that. You know, this game has nothing to do with past games. That was last year. We're playing a really good AFC opponent. We're 500 right now. We want to stay atop of our division and get a win. You think about that stuff going into it, but in terms of what it plays out in a game, it really has no correlation, and you try to make sure that it doesn't.
I think what makes watching that game last year so challenging and so hard, and I know for Kyle, it is because the game was in their grasp. They had a great opportunity on a 3rd and 5 situation where they had a 6-man protection called, and they had it blocked, although Kittle didn't come over and block the corner blitz. That was his man in the protection, and they would have thrown an easy option route to Christian McCaffrey for a first down. They would have milked the clock all the way down, and Moody could have either made the field goal to win the game, or the game would have gone into overtime at that point. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And then we went into overtime, and they have a wide open Brandon Ayuk in the back of the end zone near the H and the I of the Chiefs. And unfortunately, for some known reason, they forgot to block Chris Jones on the play. They just didn't block him. And so Purdy had to get rid of the ball really quickly. And so those two plays, the small details that go into these NFL games just cost them. So Kyle's sitting there. He's not a champion. Andy is. And either one of those plays goes in his direction, he's probably going to win the Super Bowl.
If you look at that game from last year, Michael, and the fact that the Chiefs were going to win, obviously the 49ers looking for revenge this upcoming weekend. But we know Andy Reid is very good coming off of the bye. We also know that Patrick Mahomes, as an underdog, has a very good ATS record as well. What is it about the combination of those two in those circumstances that has made them be so great so far in their careers?
Well, I think Andy's really good at figuring out what his team could do well, and especially on the bye week. He really does a good job of self-analysis, and he understands how he's got to play the game to win the game. And I think ultimately Mahomes is always driven by, one of the greatest motivators in all of sports is nobody believes in us, right? That drives everybody's ability to want to play better. And I think ultimately that's what you're going to see. But Mahomes hasn't played anywhere near the level we're used to seeing him. And this is a defensive team, really. And if you go back and watch the Super Bowl, it took to the fourth quarter for them to get going in Kansas City, partly because the 49ers were exhausted. I mean, one of the things about playing in a Super Bowl is it's a 5-hour game. It's exhausting. The game goes forever and ever with the long halftime, all the breaks. It just makes it really challenging. It's really hot and humid in the place you play, no matter where you play it. It's very challenging. So I think, to me, that affects your team, and that affects the 49ers because in the fourth quarter, they got wore down. I mean, it's the same thing happened to them before. I mean, they have a chance to beat them down in Miami, and they were up by 10 points in the fourth quarter. They lost that game. They just couldn't do anything in the fourth. Again, let's give the Chiefs credit for coming back. But Reid's so good at being able to understand and attacking the team, and they work hard to practice in the bye week. They just don't take it as all their time off. This team gets better as the year goes on.
Still a few injuries to monitor in this one. 49ers dealing with some secondary injuries up against a Chiefs passing attack that is still pretty thin. And then Jordan Mason, we have to monitor his injury status as well. Michael, who are some of the most impactful players that we'll need to watch out for in this game?
Well, I think Mason for sure. I mean, look, they need him to be the back. I think, to me, he gives them a chance because they don't have McCaffrey. They've got to be able to go with that. They have to have him in the game to really get their run game going. Now, look, this is not a game where you're going to sit there and make a living off the run game. Even last year with McCaffrey, I think they averaged 3.3 yards a carry. Garando, they've got to get him going, the young rookie. They think they can. I mean, he's really talented. We saw the long run he made against Seattle last week that helped them win that game. But, look, this is going to come down to Brock Purdy's ability to throw, and it's going to come down to the offensive line's ability to pass protect in this game. And I think when you look at this team, this 49ers, the one thing that has hurt them is their depth, right? That's where they get hurt. Elliott's injured, and Mustafa, the safety's injured, so they got to have really good depth going in this.
All right, we still got to talk about Jets-Steelers. That's another 1.5-point spread. And by the way, we talked Lions-Vikings. 4 of the 5 VSiN experts who are capping this game are on the same side. So you got to go sign up for VSiN Pro right now. Got to go see who they're picking in that one.
And they're off.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we continue to get you ready for NFL Week 7, capping all the games this weekend. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford. Let's get to the Jets and Steelers now. New York came into this one a 1.5-point dog on the look-ahead line, but after Monday Night Football, that offense showing more production, they reopened as a 1.5-point favorite, and that is where the line has held steady all week long at the Pittsburgh Steelers, a low total here of 39 points. Obviously, the big storyline in this game, Michael, and it's one we've talked about all season, is Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Justin Fields now losing his job to the veteran. What do you think of the decision?
Well, I don't know as much as he lost his job. I think eventually Russell, when he was healthy, was going to come in. I think the Steelers need to find out what they have with Russell. I think they feel like because of his long career and the tape that they've seen, he can offer more than what they saw out of Justin Fields, who really did a good job for them. He just didn't make enough plays. I mean, I think it's really challenging for him to kind of be consistent. I thought he improved from his time in Chicago to what he's done in Pittsburgh, but it just wasn't enough. And I think ultimately that's the biggest issue here. Whereas they're going to go to Russell, which, again, I'm not sure about that because Russell has struggled to stay in the pocket. Russell struggles to work the ladder in the pocket, moving up into the pocket. He wants to run out. And this Steeler offensive line, losing Zach Frazier last week in Las Vegas, is not very good. So I think that's a real problem. But typically, when these lines flip like this, when a favorite goes to a dog, it's always a little concerning. It's usually the line movement doesn't necessarily mean to the right side. Look, the one thing about the Jet team, it's so funny. The Jets have scored the same amount of points through week 6 and 24 that they scored in 23. I mean, it's really kind of remarkable, right? I mean, for all this talk about how great the Jets are, they've scored the same amount of points as they did last year. So I don't know how much better Devontae Adams is going to make the team. He's going to replace Lazard as the number 2 receiver, which moves Mike Williams off the team eventually, maybe this week or first part of next week. But the problems with the Jets are still their offensive line. Can they protect? And they've got T.J. Watt, who to me is the most valuable player in the league.
Going back to the Steelers and focusing in on this quarterback situation, I find it so curious, Michael, because what do you do if Russell Wilson has a bad game? Do you go back to Justin Fields right away? Like, I don't think you could do that. It would feel as if Russell Wilson, if you're going to make him the starter, has to have some type of window to perform well or perform poorly. You have to actually give him a sample size of games in order to really figure this out. And I think that's a curious position for the Steelers to be in because they had been playing relatively well with Justin Fields as a starting quarterback. I will say this, to Justin Fields' credit, as he spoke to the media yesterday, he has been able to take this whole situation in stride.
I don't think I played, good enough, if I'm being real with you. If I'm being real with myself, I think if, I did play well enough, I don't think there would be, any sort of who should be playing, who should not. So at the end of the day, we got a few wins. Of course, I'm glad about that. But, there's areas that, I could be better at. And, I'm just going to, continue to work on those and continue to get better.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the kid's being really honest, and I appreciate that. I think his self-awareness is outstanding. He didn't really make enough plays. Now, look, you can make the argument the Steelers don't have enough weapons and yada, yada, yada. Their offensive line, they'll be starting their third center. Their offensive line is kind of in a mess. But I think what the Steelers want is they want more from them. I think they want to be able to make more plays in the passing game, hit the receivers that are open. And I think when you watch Fields, he's just not have enough control of the football to really make a consistent offense go forward. And I think they've done a great job of managing him, but I think it becomes really harder and harder, and especially when it gets to third down. Remember, he's averaged 6.9 yards per attempt. So as much as they want to throw the ball down the field, that's a real issue. And this team has won with their defense. I mean, they've given up 16 points in the second quarter in 6 games. That's all they've given up. And they've given up no points in the third quarter. So the middle of the game, this team has really controlled the opponent. They just haven't been able to build a big enough lead because they don't score any points or make enough plays in the passing game. And I think that's the biggest issue.
A few games sitting at the key number of 3 we want to get to. But first, as we cap these games, are you the type of player who's looking to get down $10,000 or more on an NFL line at the best price in the market? Or perhaps you're looking to get your in-game play instantly accepted. Introducing Sport Trade, the app that's going to change sports betting. -104 lines instead of the typical -110. Instant in-game betting and a concierge player service. Sport Trade is perfect for those who want a premium betting experience. Sport Trade is live in New Jersey, Colorado, Iowa, and now Arizona, and coming to Virginia soon. Download Sport Trade and use the code VSiN to earn 10% cash back on each wager in your first week. Terms apply. You must be 21 years or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. So looking at these games sitting at the key number of 3, Houston Texans at the Green Bay Packers. This line was 2.5 on Monday, immediately bet up to 3, and that's where it has held steady all week. But you have 2 of the best young quarterbacks in the game in this one, Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud. Michael, what are the matchups you're watching in this one?
Well, I think this is really an interesting game because what we're going to see is we're going to see Joe Mixon. When he's back, they're a different team, right? And I think that really makes the Houston offense more effective. When he ran the ball, the first game of the year, they ran for 213 as a team. Last week when he came back, they averaged 192 with him in the game, and he's averaged 5.5 yards a carry. So he's been dynamic. Now, the big issue to me in this game is without Nico Collins, right? Nico Collins is their best player on the outside. I mean, Stephon Diggs averages 10.6 yards per catch. Dell, who's really an explosive receiver, averages 9.7. Dalton Schultz, their tight end, who they re-signed, averages 7.9. They don't have any big playability, so that really concerns you going in. I'm not going to count the 41 points they scored against a bad Patriot team. But I think when you look at this team, that's the concern, is can they make explosive plays? And they haven't been as consistent as a team offensively. You know, when you look at C.J. Stroud's numbers, right? I think to me he has been good. I don't think he's been elite. I think he's been really good, but I think it hasn't been to where you say, oh my God, they're going to score 30. No, I think to me they settle for a lot of field goals, and you see it when their kicker kicks a ton of them. For Green Bay, this is a tough game. I mean, I want to take Green Bay in this game because they start fast. They've scored 90 points in the first half in 6 games. I mean, this is really good. But Naverson, their kicker, is horrible. He's 5 for 9 outside of 40 yards inside, and he's not even attempted a 50-yarder. And so to me, when you're playing these 3-point games and you want to lean towards the team giving up the 3 that has a really bad kicker, I think you really got to be concerned about that. I think that's a real problem, Grace. So I want to take Green Bay here. I really do. But for me, because their offense is so good, I mean, they can get it down the field. Jordan Love really can throw it, and they can run it. And I think they could take advantage of the Houston defense. But I worry about the kicker in a close game.
Let's move ahead to a divisional game in the NFC East between the Eagles and the Giants. Philly opened as a 4-point favorite in this one. That was bet down to 3.5 or 3. So make sure you shop around for the number you want. This is the Saquon Barkley Bowl after he was unceremoniously let go by New York. He says he doesn't really care anymore. It's been a long time since he's been there. I mean, it's been just a few months, but he doesn't expect any type of reaction. What are you expecting for him, Michael?
Well, I think the Giant fans know the whole deal, right? They know that Joe Shane, their general manager, really had no interest in bringing him back at any money. So I think that they get that. But for me, this is an interesting line. I mean, the look-ahead line was 5.5. Now it's down to 3. And there's really no money coming in on the Giants. So obviously some syndicates are moving this number down, which is strange because without Andrew Thomas, their best tackle, Daniel Jones is going to be under constant pressure the whole game. They're going to have to move Jermaine Illuminor over to left tackle. They're going to have to put Evan Neal in at right tackle if they dare be brave enough to do that, which could be a real issue. So, and the Giants, I don't know what Malik Neighbors' status is. He's a really good player, but he hasn't really been dynamic in the sense of making explosive plays. He's the longest plays 39 yards in the opening play against the Cowboys. And that's not on him. That's on the Giants' offense and their ability to really not hold protection long enough. That's what worries you. I don't understand this line. The Giants have played everybody close. I get all that. But without Thomas at left tackle, I don't see where people are wanting to bet the Giants here, where they go. The other factor that makes me worry about the Giants in this game is the Giants' strength is their defensive front. And the Eagles' strength is their offensive line. The Eagles will block this front. And the Eagles will take advantage of one of the worst secondaries in all of football with their outside receivers. Now, I realize Jalen Hurts hasn't played well, but to me, this number looks so tempting, but it's tricky. When it looks so tempting, it never is.
All right, we'll continue previewing these games as we move on in the show. But coming up next, it's time to get some Bookmaker insights. Thomas Gable of the Borgata joining us with a report on where the action is going this weekend. That's coming up next on the VSiN Morning Line.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Wake up with Michael Lombardi, Grace Remington, and Harrison Samford on the VSiN Morning Line.
I will say this. I told Brian Daboll the minute he went there, you got to get a quarterback. I don't know one thing that Jacksonville does well, and so I'm not going to make a bet with a team that doesn't do anything well.
They'll cover all the top scores and stories from the night before, keep you up to date on the news impacting betting lines, plus give you their picks for the upcoming action. The VSiN Morning Line, weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern, right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we are getting you ready for NFL Week 7. We've been previewing these games. Now it's time to get a betting report on the action coming in from Thomas Gable, Sportsbook Director of the Borgata. He joins us on the Progressive guest line now from the East Coast. TG, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being here. Let's start with this record for the road favorites. They are now 10-0 against the spread in the last 2 weeks. How has that impacted you, and how will you change the way you set these lines moving forward?
Well, good morning. And the road favorite record, I mean, whether it's a road favorite or home favorite, if a favorite wins in the NFL, it's typically not great for the sports book. Really in any sport, but the NFL, it seems to be more magnified, where you have a lot more recreational money, and those players typically tend to gravitate towards favorites and overs if they're betting totals. And when you have a bunch of favorites that come in 1 week, like you saw last Sunday, it's never really a good result for the house. And that's what happened. You heard a lot of sports books saying after last Sunday how bad it was. It was the worst week in years. And what really happens is you get players who kind of like to combine those favorites into money line parlays, or even if they're parlaying them all on the spread and they cover. And so you're ending up losing on parlays. It wasn't terrible for us last Sunday. It wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. The Eagles actually bailed us out last Sunday because they didn't cover. They won, but didn't cover. And we had a very big decision in that game. And then we really, going into the Monday night game with the Jets and the Bills, you have a lot of liability tied into that game with teasers and parlays and so forth. So if the Jets had won that game or had covered, we would have been facing a really, really bad result when you factor in all the parlay and teaser liability there. The teasers did get there, but luckily the parlays did not. Last weekend it's just one of those things with the NFL. If the favorites continue to cover, whether they're home or on the road, it's usually not a good result for the books because of all the recreational money that does come in on the NFL.
The one line, TG, that seems strange to me is the Philadelphia Giant line. The Giants losing Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, which is really, to me, as important as one of the most important positions in handicapping is can they protect? And this Giant line isn't very good. I mean, they struggled to protect, but now I think it gets worse. And the Eagles, which have a good team, I mean, they could have covered late in that game. I mean, they played around with their food basically against Cleveland, give up a blocked touchdown on a field goal. But to me, 3, this line moved from 5.5 opening number a couple weeks ago to now down to 3. Are you still getting Giant money?
We were at 3.5. We're currently sitting at 3. At 3.5, we were getting respected money on the Giants. And that's really where you're kind of seeing this number now sell between 3. It may get back to 3.5. And listen, from an Eagles standpoint, like you said, they probably should have covered that game last week against Cleveland, and fortunately for us, they did not. And probably fortunately for Nick Sirianni, he's not at Lincoln Financial Field this week. He gets to go up to the Meadowlands and gets a break from the Eagles fans. So, the Giants here, as you said, how are they going to be able to protect? Obviously, Jones is certainly a mobile quarterback. They've been using his legs, and that's where I think he's honestly at his best. I mean, the guy is not a top-tier NFL quarterback by any means, but when he's at his best, it's because he's using his legs. Now, the Eagles here, they really have, well, technically, they have the easiest schedule here for the remainder of the year in the league. So this is kind of do or die time for Philadelphia, I think. If they go to the Meadowlands here and lose this game to the Giants, Sirianni's seat's going to become very hot. You're going to see the pressure that he's been facing here, especially from the media and fans, is going to get ratcheted up tenfold. So this is an expected win for Philadelphia here. On paper, you look at this game and you say this should be an easy cover for the Eagles, but this team has just not found anything to be easy this year in any week. So we'll see if the Giants can keep this close and potentially even pull off the upset.
One of the bigger pieces of news so far this week, TG, is the potential switch at the quarterback position for the Pittsburgh Steelers, with Russell Wilson reportedly coming in to be QB1 over Justin Fields. How has the book reacted to that move, and how do you anticipate this potentially changing the Pittsburgh Steelers over the long haul?
Well, I'll tell you, before the season started, before the Russell Wilson injury, which just on paper, grading out Fields to Wilson, I didn't see too much of a difference, maybe a half a point. Now, Fields has played well within the Mike Tomlin system here this year. Obviously, the record is there for the Steelers. They've gotten off to a very good start under Fields. He's doing what he's been asked to do. And, if they do go to Wilson, will there be a drop-off here, or will Wilson kind of be able to do what Tomlin wants as well and not make mistakes, not turn the ball over, and obviously all eyes are going to be on this game anyway, just because of the New York Jets. For us, we know that we're going to be taking a lot of Jets money here in this game, especially now that they have Devontae Adams, which was the big news, of course, this week with them. And, again, a very, very important game for Aaron Rodgers and crew, because, another loss here really puts any sort of playoff hopes that they have in jeopardy. They certainly need this game. And they find themselves here again. If you're looking at the trends, here is a road favorite in the New York Jets. They didn't open as a favorite. We opened Pittsburgh as a 1.5 favorite, but Jets currently laying 2 now on the road. And like I said, we've been taking Jets money. We're going to continue to take Jets money here in this spot for them, especially if Wilson is the starter for Pittsburgh. I don't think there's a whole lot of optimism around him, and especially from casual bettors. And what you've seen from Fields so far this year has been pretty good, and he's been winning games. So I think we're going to continue to see some Jets money come in here.
Thomas Gable of the Borgata joining us now on the Progressive Guest Line. Let's get into some of these college football games. Obviously, Bama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, the 2 biggest ones of the weekend. But on the overall slate, where have you seen respected money come in on?
Well, it's certainly with the Georgia and Texas game, we've seen respected money come in on Texas early. That number is now up to 5 and open 3.5. I made the game 4, and we did see respected money come in on Texas there and push this number up to 5, where it currently sits now. So that's going to be, my opinion, the most heavily bet game of the week. For sure. We've also seen respected money come in here on Indiana. It's a 12 o'clock noon start, Indiana, Nebraska, and opened up Indiana 4.5, and that's been bet up to 6.5 now. Very early respected money coming in on Indiana and pushing that opener 4.5 up to 6.5. So that's another one that's moved. And like you said, the Bama game again, it's going to be a lot of recreational money coming in on that just because of the matchup. So that'll be a heavily bet game. Bama 3-point road favorites at Tennessee, and they only opened a 1.5 favorites there in that one. That's been bet up to 3. So overall, I think in both NFL and college, there's some really good games, some attractive matchups on paper. And, it should be a great weekend, and you throw in MLB, it's going to be a busy weekend.
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on the MLB playoffs before you head out, too. We have about 50 seconds left here.
Listen, I think if the Mets obviously are facing elimination tonight, if they're out, they're really our only liability of the teams remaining for the World Series market. So we'll be in good shape if the Dodgers can get that done. They're a good result for us, both in the pennant and for the World Series. And over in the American League, obviously you have Heel going, who hasn't pitched in a while for the Yankees. Cleveland got themselves back into that series yesterday in dramatic fashion. So Yankees are a big liability, though, for the pennant.
All right, Thomas Gable, sports director of the Brigada. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights as always, and enjoy the weekend.
All right, thank you.
All right, coming up next, we are resetting at the top of the hour with a recap of last night's Thursday night football game. Plus, we're getting into Michael Lombardi's larceny smooth bet of the week. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
The only thing better than football is the excitement of all the contests.